Hello guys, welcome back to Movie Digest. Today I will explain a 2022 Spanish thriller, The Occupants. Spoilers ahead, watch out and take care. Before we get into the video, subscribe and turn on the notification bell for more content. The movie begins with Javier, a former ad executive, being interviewed by two interviewers as he presents them with a short video ad for a home appliance company. The interviewers, a young man and a lady, give their remarks and comments on his presentation. Javier is hopeful for a positive outcome, but his presentation does not meet the expectation of the interviewers, and his application is turned down while being politely asked out of the room. Javier leaves and walks down to the parking receptionist, Iker, to validate his parking pass, but Iker refuses to validate his parking due to company policies. Javier pleads with Iker to make an exception on his behalf when one of the interviewers who had earlier interviewed him sees them as she passes by. Seeing the situation, she uses her veto power and orders Iker to validate Javier's parking. Javier heads to his car and then drives off. Javier arrives home and talks to his wife about the interview's outcome. They also talk about the swindling financial situation in the family. Javier's wife, Marga, suggests they move out to a smaller apartment they own alongside other ways to cut expenses and adapt to the tense moments. Javier gets intimate with his wife, Marga, and later that evening goes out for a jog. The following day, Javier talks to Danny, his son. The latter dislikes the idea of the family situation and the decision to move to a smaller, less luxurious apartment to cut costs. He also inquires about Danny's welfare at school. In the next scene, Javier gives the housekeeper a ride home, and while in the car, he informs her of his plans to move out of the house. Then, despite her pleadings, he politely fires her while collecting the house keys from her. Javier moves out of his apartment the following day to a smaller apartment. Sad and moody Javier, in a bid to get his life back on track, is seen attending various classes, seminars, and interviews, including an interview with Dario, which later turns out to be a futile effort. Angry and frustrated, Javier pours out his frustration as he kicks his car several times, causing a dent in the vehicle's body. While checking the extent of the damage he had done to the car, he finds the key to the former apartment he had just moved out of. He then drives down to his former apartment, and from a distance, he sights the new occupants. He gets home at night, exchanges pleasantries with his wife, and drives out the following day to his former apartment to spy on Thomas, the new occupant. Waiting in his car parked outside the building garage, Thomas, the new occupant, drives out. And Javier quickly finds his way into the building. He inspects the house as he gets in and goes through some of Thomas's stuff. Javier later gets home and takes Danny, who is laughed at for being obese at school, for a jog up a hill around the street. Danny finds it challenging to jog up the hill. He gets exhausted and then pukes. Embarrassed, they head home, where Javier misunderstands Marga, his wife, while explaining what happened to Danny. Later at night, Javier drives to his former apartment and, from a distance, watches the new occupants from an open window. He later gets home and goes through various video ads he has worked on. In the next scene, Javier secretly finds his way into his former apartment as soon as the new occupants have left the house. He goes through some of Thomas's private documents and computer files, where he learns that Thomas is in therapy after having issues with Laura, his wife, after an accident that occurred when Thomas drove under the influence of alcohol and had an accident with his wife and daughter. Javier stealthily follows Thomas to his therapy session in the next scene. He makes a scene as he tries to hurriedly leave the therapy session after waiting for a long time for the session to end. Creating an awkward situation with all eyes on him, Javier begins talking about himself but uses Thomas's life situation as his instead. After the session with him talking last, he meets with Thomas, and they agree to talk over a cup of coffee. Javier maintains a false identity at the coffee shop while gaining much information about Thomas and his affairs during his conversation. Finally, after talking for some time, they both leave the bar and bid each other goodnight. Javier gets home, and when his wife asks where he is coming from, he lies by telling her that his class went over. The next day, Javier goes out again to Thomas's place. He drops a piece of poisoned meat at the entrance to the building, to get rid of the dog that always announces his presence whenever he sneaks into Thomas's apartment. He almost gets his cover blown by a woman at the elevator but somehow maneuvers his way out of the situation unseen by her. Inside Thomas's apartment, he goes through Thomas's files and computer and syncs Thomas's calendar with his phone. The scene ends with the dog dying from eating Javier's bait. At night, Javier watches from inside a bar, Thomas and Laura having a heated misunderstanding under the rain outside of the bar. Laura zooms off, and angry Thomas begins approaching the bar. Javier sees him coming and quickly finds a place to hide from Thomas because he had been the one to change Thomas's calendar, which somehow affected things and led to the misunderstanding between the couple. The next scene shows Javier and Thomas gathered in another therapy session. Thomas gives a speech about how he is holding up with his affairs, and Javier talks next about himself, mentioning a project he is working on and, in so doing, indirectly passes a message to Thomas. They head out to the coffee shop together, and at the start of a conversation, Thomas informs Javier that he was late to pick up Monica, his daughter, which led to a misunderstanding with Laura, his wife. Thomas then invites Javier for dinner with his family, which Javier agrees. In the next scene, Javier, with flowers in his hands, goes to Thomas's house to honor Thomas's dinner invite. At the entrance of the building, the gardener recognizes Javier, which seems to be a problem for him as his cover might get blown. However, Javier dismisses the gardener before Thomas comes to take him in. Javier pretends to be entering the apartment for the first time, and within a short while, he gets acquainted with Thomas's wife, Laura, and his daughter Monica. They discuss this during dinner at the dinner table. After dinner, Javier volunteers to help Laura with the dishes, and there is a brief conversation between them during which Javier tries his best and maintains a false identity while answering questions from Laura. The following day, Thomas meets the gardener on his way while taking Monica to school. The gardener presents a flower to Monica and asks Thomas some questions about Javier's visit yesterday. Unfortunately, Thomas could not answer the gardener's questions because of a conflict with Javier's identity. Javier fakes getting himself in a car accident due to taking much alcohol in the next scene. He then calls Thomas over to the location where Thomas arrives and takes away Javier's gin bottle, which spills a little of its content on his clothes. As they hold a deep conversation, Thomas reveals that he works for Laura's father as the vice president of a transport company. He says this to let Javier know that he has all his success and connections due to being Laura's husband. Javier borrows Thomas's phone on the pretense of calling a car towing company but deceptively uses it to send mail to his phone. He later pleads with Thomas not to tell his wife what happened, and Thomas agrees to Javier's plea. Later, Javier gets home and, when asked about his car by his wife, he lies to her about selling the vehicle. He then receives a call from the gardener, who wishes to meet with him the following day. Also that night, Thomas's wife Laura smells alcohol on Thomas's clothes while putting his clothes away. She gets curious and asks Thomas about it, to which Thomas confesses what had happened with Javier after lying about it. The next day, Javier meets with the gardener at the zoo. The gardener informs Javier that he was aware of him sneaking into Thomas's apartment consecutively. Javier attempts to bribe the gardener, but the gardener declines and makes an offer. The gardener asks Javier to bring him dirty panties belonging to Monica when next he sneaks into their apartment. He also threatens to call Thomas and reveal Javier's identity if he fails to bring Monica's panties. Later that day, Javier sneaks into Thomas's apartment to steal one of Monica's dirty panties when Laura comes home. Javier gets in a tight situation as Laura calls his line, which rings in Javier's pockets. Suspicious, Laura inspected the room to see if anyone else aside she was there, but Javier quickly found somewhere and hid. Laura later sends Javier a voicemail message and leaves the house. Later that day, Laura and Javier meet up in a joint, and Laura discusses her wish of not wanting Javier to see her husband Thomas anymore. She also informs him that she was aware of what happened to him the last night and that Thomas would never lie to her. Javier denies calling Thomas the night before, but instead, Thomas had sent him a mail asking him to come because he needed help and had messed up. He goes on to show her the mail he had texted with Thomas's phone. Laura goes home and confronts Thomas about lying to her. They both argue and quarrel while Javier watches them from a distance. In the next scene, Javier is halfway caught by his wife modifying the contents of a pepper spray. He was adding peanut butter to the pepper spray Thomas was allergic to. He takes the trash out and then takes a taxi. While in the cab, Javier notices that Magra is following him and quickly asks the driver to change directions. He drops off in a building and enters a class in an attempt to lose his wife, who has been following him. The next day, Javier meets with the gardener in a vehicle and hands over Monica's panties to him. Javier opens the door to leave but is held back by the gardener, who has another request. The gardener asks Javier to plant a camera in Monica's room, and this time, the gardener threatens to call the police on Javier if he fails to plant the camera. Javier accepts and then leaves. At night, Javier is seen in what appears to be a storeroom going through some of the gardener's working equipment. Javier visits Thomas at his office the next day and gets beaten up by an angry Thomas. The latter is infuriated because Javier lied to Laura about him, which led to a misunderstanding between them. Simultaneously, The gardener whose equipment has been tampered with by Javier accidentally sets himself on fire while trying to turn on one of his equipment. In the next scene, the ambulance service attains the gardener when Lara sees Javier coming up with bruises on his face. They go inside, and she treats Javier's bruises as they hold a conversation. Javier deceptively tells Lara that Thomas might be paranoid and might have suspected something romantic going on between them, hence the beating. He then gave Lara the pepper spray, whose contents he had altered, asking her to use it as protection against Thomas. At night, Javier gets home and is confronted by his wife over some issues. He makes an excuse for needing some space and tells her his intentions to stay away for a few days. He then makes his way to a motel and arranges a phone call for Monica to meet with a top ballet dancer. In the next scene, Javier, Lara, and Monica are present as they watch the ballet dancers rehearse for a competition. It is a beautiful moment for Monica and Lara. After the rehearsal, Javier had someone take a picture of him, Monica, and Lara together. He sends the image to Thomas, and Thomas gets mad after seeing a picture of his wife and kid together with this stranger, Javier. The trio head home together in a cab as Javier bides Lara and an already sleeping Monica goodnight as they drop off the taxi. As soon as Javier had left, an infuriated Thomas, who had been watching them all along from his vehicle, stepped out and stormed towards the apartment. Thomas bangs the door and slightly forces his way in. He and Lara engage in a heated argument about Javier. The situation seemed to get out of control when Lara reached for the pepper spray and released its contents on Thomas's face. Thomas, allergic to the peanut butter in the spray, falls to the ground and stops breathing. Panicking, Lara reaches to a phone call from Javier, who was hanging around the apartment but lied to be in a cab, and shakily tells him of the situation. Javier arrives at the scene some moments later, cajoles Lara into a room, and consoles her, promising to call the police. Javier steps out to where Thomas lies on the ground and attempts to swap the pepper sprays with the one he brought along. However, Thomas is still conscious, leaving Javier with no choice but to suffocate him to death. The next scene shows Javier dropping Monica off at school in his car and then heading to his new office, where Thomas worked. His wife Magra visits him and tells him about all his crimes, which she got to know by investigating his suspicious movements and her intentions of reporting him to the police. Javier threatens to make her life difficult if she carries on with her plans. The movie ends with Javier driving to his new luxurious apartment to meet his now stepdaughter Monica and his new wife, Lara. The film ends similarly to an ad that he presented at the beginning. So that's it for today, guys. If you like this video, make sure to like, share, and subscribe for more content.